Magandang umaga, Malacanang Press Corps, and welcome sa ating press briefing ngayong araw, November 28. During the sectoral meeting led by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. this morning, Finance Secretary Benjamin Diokno gave an overview of the country's economic performance this year. He also discussed the economic prospects for 2024. And to tell us more about this, we have with us Finance Secretary Benjamin Diokno. Good morning, Secretary Diokno.
Good morning, and magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. I will show you the complete set of deck that I presented this morning, and so I will just elaborate on it. I'll try to tone down the discussion, okay? So the first one is this slide. It says the economic growth in Q3, that's third quarter, remain as at 5.9. It's broad-based because all sectors grew. No? Tawag namin broad-based. Services grew by 6.8, the industrial sector grew by 5.5, and then the agricultural sector by 0.9%. Now, next slide. The economic growth continues to be underpinned by robust domestic demand. This is now on the demand side. No? So yung final consumption, magkano yung demand, magkano yung in-import, magkano export, investment, etc. So that's the second slide. Third slide. Now, if you look at the performance of the Philippines compared to other ASEAN countries, including, we included China here, we're the fastest growing economies in Asia. Okay, 5.9, that's the third quarter growth. And then compared to Vietnam's 5.3, Indonesia's 4.9, 4.9 for China, Malaysia 3.3, and Singapore 0.7. Now, if you take the first, please back. If you take the first three quarters, Q1 to Q3, the Philippines is still the fastest growing. So the average growth rate from the first to second to the third quarter is 5.5, followed by Indonesia, or rather China, 5.2, Indonesia 5.1, and then so forth and so on. So as you can see, if you consider Asia as the fastest growing region in the world, we are the fastest growing economy in the fastest growing region in the world. Okay. So next slide. So even the international financial institutions agree. No? In fact, their outlook is that the economy, the Philippine economy, will grow the fastest. No? Globally, the economy will actually slow down. So they're saying that the economy will grow by 3%. The global economy will grow by 3% this year, but it will slow down to 2.9% next year. In the case of the Philippines, they say, the IMF says 5.3 this year, 6% next year, and so forth and so on. Okay, so you have the ADB, you have the ASEAN +3 macroeconomic office, although there's a headline, I think, some Manila, one of the news daily, it has been adjusted. No? The AMRO growth has been adjusted to 5.6 from 5.9, but still the highest, okay, and so forth. And next slide, please. But if you look at a bigger picture, compare it with the other countries, so you have the growth projection from 2023 to 2024. So the World Bank expects the Philippine economy to outgrow its East Asia and Pacific peers. Now, this is the broader list of countries. They expect the economy to grow at 5.6%. Now, next slide. So we are confident that the economy will grow by around 6%. That's the lower end of our growth target of 6 to 7% this year, and we will continue to grow at around 6.5 to 8% for the rest of President Marcos's term. Okay, so that's the meaning of that slide. Now, another important metric that I showed the president is that the Philippines has the lowest external debt to GDP ratio. So this is external. No? I will show you later yung tinatawag na total debt, which is external plus domestic. So if you notice, the Philippines has an external debt of 27.5. Okay, compare that with Indonesia's 30, and then Thailand's 40, and then Malaysia's more than 60%. This supports the view that the Philippines has a relatively strong external position as it is less vulnerable to adverse external shocks. So in case ang problema kasi ng external debt is pag nag-devalue yung currency mo, then you have a bigger problem, right? So in terms of external debt, we don't face adverse external shock. And this is supported by the next slide, please. The investor credit rating. So this is the most recent investor credit ratings from Fitch, JCR, S&P, Moody's, RNI of Japan. Okay. So recently, or just this month, Fitch Ratings affirmed the Philippines BBB rating with stable outlook. BBB that's investment grade. And then this comes on the heels of the rating agency's upgraded outlook on the Philippines from negative to stable in May 2023. Now in August 2023, RNI, a Japanese credit rating agency, affirmed the country's BBB plus rating. So that's and revised its outlook from stable to positive. Okay. So that's as of August 2023. This is very important, yung ratings. No? Because of the pandemic, I think more than 1/3 of economies in the world were downgraded. Did not downgrade. Tayo naman, they maintained our ratings plus may upgrade pa tayo in outlook. Even the US was downgraded. Kasi masama yung kanilang debt situation. Okay. Now, as we recognize, yung rating naman natin will have some what we call domestic risk and external risk. Ano yung domestic risk? Number one is the elevated prices due to inadequate food supply. So, brought about by typhoons and natural disasters stronger than expected El Nino. Yung El Nino may last until June 2024, so middle of next year. And of course, the spread of highly infectious animal diseases. Ito pa rin yung sa pork, no? ASF. The waning of pent-up demand. So the consensus is that yung pent-up demand ng Pilipinas baka mag-slow down na siya. And of course, yung impact ng high interest rates. If you notice, the central bank raised the interest rates. Although I think it will be steady now for the next cycle. No? And then limited absorptive capacity of implementing agencies and LGUs. Ang ibig sabihin yan, marami silang pera, pero hindi nila nagagastos. No? So this applies both to some government corporations and some LGUs, local government units. Now, we consider the following as external risk. Elevated international commodity and input prices. This is the result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and then higher fertilizer costs because both countries are into fertilizer, high oil prices. Now, lower global demand and possible U.S. recession. Kasi tinaas ng mga bansa yung interest rates nila, that means it's more difficult to borrow money or more expensive to borrow money, so there will be less borrowing, magkakaroon ng recession. And I think that's happening now in Europe and in many Latin American countries. And in China naman, there's a slowdown in China. And then geopolitical and trade tensions. Ito pa rin yung nangyayari ngayon sa Israel and of course still sa Russia. And yung trade tensions, maraming bansa kasi na gusto na ngayon nila to protect their own. For example, India, ayaw niya na mag-export ng rice masyado. I think that's partly because may election na hinaharap sila sa. So hanggang next year, medyo restricted pa rin yung exports nila. And then the fourth possible external risk kaya I'm sure narinig nyo na ito, is yung outbreak of pneumonia in China. Okay? And we don't know yet the extent of that problem. And the other problem in China is the so-called property crisis. Yung mga, kasi China is kind of decentralized, so yung mga probinsya nila, nagpautang so on properties, and so now they are facing a crisis. Okay. Next slide. So, so yung sabi ko, we are still hoping or that we will meet the 6% growth. No? And what are we doing to do that? Number one, we should continue our anti-inflation drive. No? Kasi lower inflation means more purchasing power for consumers. And then yung efficient budget execution. Na siguro natatandaan ninyo ng second quarter, talagang nag-slow down ang budget implementation. But we were able to recover in the third quarter, and we expect to continue the recovery in the fourth quarter. Navigate external headwinds. So we monitor what's happening in the world, and there's an interagency committee na monitor yung what's happening in the world. Na. And then we have to implement structural reforms. Narinig din ninyo that during the crisis, during the pandemic, we did not wait for the virus to subside. We implemented some structural reforms, like yung PSA. What is the PSA? Public Service Act, where we opened many sectors of the economy, like telco, airports, shipping, toll roads. We opened this up. No? We allowed 100% investment or ownership of those who will invest in these areas. And in addition, we opened up the renewable energy, all types of renewable energy, solar, wind, and so forth and so on. So we want to make sure that we are able to implement them. No? Now on inflation, as you know, headline inflation eased to 4.9% in October from 6.1% in September. Yung 4.9 is even lower than the forecast of BSP, which is 5.1 to 5.9%, no? Or midpoint 5.5. So we are hoping that November and December the inflation rate will continue to slow down. The forecast of BSP is that inflation will be within the range 2 to 4% by the first quarter of next year. And then slightly it will be around 4% by the second quarter because of the what's called base effect. Because if you compare the April, May, and June inflation last year, medyo mababa. So tawag ng base effect. So baka tumaas ulit, but it will end up midpoint between 2 to 4% by 2024 and 2025. So that means, conclusion, inflation is going to be managed well. It will be within the target range of 2 to 4% for the next 2 years. So next. So ito yung ginagawa namin. This is the so-called Interagency Committee on Inflation and Market Outlook. This is chaired by the Secretary of Finance and the Secretary of NEDA. Okay, so we are implementing these measures to make sure that we are able to mitigate inflation. So what are this? We want to improve the production and fill the domestic supply gap through timely and adequate importation based on ex-ante supply-demand analysis. So we are applying science to anticipate the gap between magkano ba yung kailangan ng ekonomiya at magkano kailangan nating angkatin. No? And so we have to do that in a timely manner so hindi na-apektuhan yung presyo masyado. Kasi in the past, walang science dun sa importation. No? Nag-i-import ka, tapos dadating yung importation mo at the time na nag-harvest naman. So, mali ang timing. So second, we are going to monitor and assess market developments, including the use of remote sensing technology. So with the use of the satellite, we can see gaano ba talaga yung nakaplant na corn and rice. So na-anticipate natin kung magkano yung supply. Now, we will fast-track the response to address the impact of recent typhoons and the implementation of the El Niño Mitigation and Adaptation Plan. And then, of course, protect the vulnerable sector, including the agriculture and transport sectors. Ang importante rito is targeted intervention, targeted subsidy for those who will be affected by the inflation. So these are usually the farmers, the fisher folks, and the transport sector. In other countries, what they apply is what is called generalized subsidy. So what does that mean? For example, kung tumataas yung presyo ng gasolina, they cut the tax. So everybody benefits, rich, poor, middle income. No? Tayo naman, we target. So tumaas, hindi tayo nagkakat ng tax sa fuel, but tina-target natin sino yung mga na-affectuhan. And that is the appropriate approach according to the World Bank and the IMF. So next measure is that we support the extension of the reduced MFN tariff rates for rice, corn, and pork under Executive Order Number 10. We request a timely completion of transmission projects. Ito malaking problema talaga yung grid natin, which is, if I remember right, if you examine your bill, a big part of that is because of the grid, cost ng grid. Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin naka-link yung Mindanao at Luzon, Mindanao and Visayas sa grid. Why is that important? Kasi ang Mindanao has excess power. Ang Visayas naman ay deficient power. Kung malink sana yon, then the power of Mindanao can be brought to the Visayas. So matagal na problema yan, and so we're requesting the President to use his office to have the timely completion of these projects. And then support energy conservation measures being promoted by the national government. There's a proposal by the DOE on how to conserve energy, and we hope this will be acted upon soon. Next slide. Okay, again, back to the budget execution. Pursue the CATSA plan in Q4 2023 and avoid underspending in the first semester of next year. And these are the measures that we want them to do. And kasama na dyan yung tinatawag na early procurement activity. Kasi under the present situation, basta nag-submit ang presidente ng budget sa Congress, which is around July or August, dapat na pwede nang mag-procure short of award ang mga ahensya so that by January 1st, i-award na lang nila. So we are going to implement that. Next. So these are the 197 infrastructure projects that the Marcos administration will implement. Okay. So when Mr. Marcos took over, he inherited many ready-to-implement projects. Okay. That is not like the situation when President Duterte took power from President Aquino. Okay. Kasi it takes a while before you can prepare a project. Merong pre-feasibility, feasibility study, detailed engineering. Sometimes it takes about 2 years to prepare that. So, swerte tayo na nang pumasok sa presidente, meron ng 197 infrastructure projects. And in fact, in the past, before President Duterte, I look at the numbers and look at infrastructure as a percent of GDP. It was only 2%. Okay, 2%. That's not sustainable, and that's very low compared to our ASEAN neighbors. Kaya pag kinukumpare tayo sa Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, parang kawawang-kawawa tayo. Kasi hindi tayo talaga nag-i-invest sa infrastructure. No? Ngayon nakikita naman ninyo, nag-i-invest na tayo, di ba? So that's the one. Okay, we have physical connectivity. So lagi ko sinasabi yan, hindi lang physical connectivity but also digital connectivity. Kasi kailangan connect natin lahat yung 2,000, ilan bang islands natin? 2,000, 7,200 islands, di ba? Correct. So we have to interconnect all this to make really an economic giant. You know? So yan, physical connectivity, 121 projects out of 197. But itong Build Better More ni Presidente Marcos has a twist. No? This time, we will use public-private partnership. We will involve the private sector. And so, next slide. Makita mo yun sa next slide. Makita mo yan, no? Out of 197 projects worth 8.7 trillion pesos. Yung public-private partnership, there are some 41 projects which are called public-private partnership. So kasi alam naman namin hindi naman kaya ng gobyerno lahat yung 8.7 trillion within that. So we are involving the private sector. And the way to do that is by improving the public-private partnership framework. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. But before that, we go to this debt-to-GDP ratio. Kasi lagi nating tinitingnan yung ang laki-laki na ng utang ng Pilipinas. No? Ganun. Actually, hindi naman masamang mangutang if you are going to invest it in the right places. No? So kung magpapatayo ka ng mga highways, mga bridges, subway, train, ganyan. Okay naman mangutang. But still, our debt to GDP ratio is manageable. Okay? Ang rule of thumb is if 60% is okay. Manageable yun. But in fact, our debt to GDP ratio before the pandemic was only 39.6%. 39.6%. But because of the pandemic, humina yung ekonomiya, tapos kailangan tayong bumili ng mga injections, di ba? Kailangan natin magbigay ng ayuda. So the debt to GDP ratio went up. But it's going down. In fact, the debt to GDP ratio right now is 60.2%. That is lower than the medium-term forecast of 61.2%. So we're managing our debt well. Our deficit to GDP ratio, again, as a result of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, our deficit to GDP ratio was only 3%. But because because of the pandemic, humina ekonomiya, hindi tayo nakakolekta ng buwis, and then we have to spend a lot of money, so tumaas yan. So, but it's now going down also. Our medium-term forecast is that the deficit to GDP ratio will be around 3% by the end of the president's term. Okay? Next. So ito yung narrowing of the fiscal deficit during the post-pandemic led to stabilization of debt to GDP ratio. So makikita ninyo, we are borrowing more domestically, yung blue, yung dark blue versus yung light blue, which is foreign. Okay? Sinadya namin yun. That's really a strategy because we don't want to borrow heavily from abroad. Kasi yun nga, the risk, yung tinatawag na foreign exchange risk. If you're heavily indebted abroad, maapektuhan ka pag nag-devalue yung currency mo. Okay? So we're doing well. Next. So we asked the President to act on the following requests. These are some tax measures. VAT on digital services, excise tax on single-use plastics. This is for climate change proposal. Ito namang VAT on digital services. This is based on fairness. No? Kasi kung bibili ka sa brick and mortar store or regular store, nagbabayad ka ng VAT, bakit hindi ka naman magbayad sa digital service? So next, so we requested also the President to encourage local government units to expand its revenue sources and boost spending to support local and national growth. So, ang message dito is that it's really an all-of-government approach. No? Hindi lang national government ang magkagastos, but also the corporations, government corporations, including GSIS and SSS, but also the local governments. Kasi ang situation ng local governments ngayon is they are in a surplus position. Surplus sila. Ang national government deficit. So bakit naman LGUs continue to be dependent on the national transfers despite its broad powers to raise sources of revenue? Lagi silang nakaasa sa transfer from the national government, and hindi nila ang tawag namin low absorptive capacity to improve the quality of public goods and services that they are supposed to deliver. So, kumbaga, sinasabi natin sa LGUs, bilis-bilisan naman yung paggastos ng pera. Okay? Next, so these are the proactive responses to external developments, so yung RCEP, etc., etc. So, more free trade agreements, etc. Next. And then, ito na yung sinasabi ko na yung public-private partnership. Di pala, ano ito mga amendments with the implementation of structural reforms. These are the structural reforms that we implemented at the height of the crisis. Okay. All right, next. All right, so we've been meeting with, so we have, pinagmamalaki ko ito lagi, na during the height of the crisis, we didn't sit idly by and wait for the virus to subside. No? We did our homework. So we did some of these reforms, but ang tanong natin, so na-reform natin to, nariyan ng batas, na-implement ba siya? So it turned out na some of them are not yet being implemented kasi kailangan pa ng IRR ng mga individuals. So parang, teka muna, pinagmamalaki ko ito, hindi pa pala gumagalaw. So ngayon, gumagalaw na siya. Okay. Next. All right. So let me go back, wala dito sa slide eh. Yung sa public-private partnership, makaramihan doon, about 1/3 of the 197 projects are actually to be implemented through public-private partnership. And mabilis na ang proseso ngayon. And in fact, we just passed a new law, Public-Private Partnership Code, na mas magpapabilis pa ng implementation nun. It takes many years for public-private partnership. Mga 2 years, at least. Mabilis na yung 2 years. Pero there are some projects under this administration na we were able to implement rather quickly. For example, yung Ninoy Aquino International Airport. We were able to do that in 11 weeks. So bubuksan na yung bid niyan by December, and then mababago na natin yung Ninoy Aquino International Airport. There's another project which we are able to complete within 7 weeks, yung extension ng T-Plex, yung mga papuntang Baguio, di ba? Meron kang SCTEX, then T-Plex, i-extend yun hanggang Laon yun. Yan, that was completed in 7 weeks. So mabilis na ngayon talaga yung public-private partnership, and we hope to implement those hand in hand with the other projects. So I'll stop here.
Okay. Thank you so much, Secretary Diokno, for presenting the current state of the Philippine economy, which looks very optimistic under the Marcos administration. Are there any questions? Okay, let's start with Eden. Eden Santos, Net 25.
Secretary, thank you po sa inyong briefing. Doon lang po ako sa mas malapit sa sikmura ng ating mga kababayan. Ano po yung aasahan ng mga Pilipino sakaling matamo po yung target na 2 to 4% na inflation na binabanggit po ninyo? Paano po ito mararamdaman? Kasi sa ngayon ay patuloy pa rin mataas yung presyo ng mga bilihin at may panukala pa nga po na gawing per kilo ang itlog. Ano po yung mararamdaman ng ating mga kababayan kapag natamo natin yung 2 to 4% na inflation rate?
Unang-una, wala dito sa deck kasi yung employment situation natin really is also very bright. No? ang unemployment natin ngayon at the moment is 4.5%, no? Mababa na 'yon compared sa other years. And in fact, it's lower than what is in the medium-term public program, medium-term economic program ni Presidente. No? Kasi, so, and also the quality of employment has improved. No? Yung dati na tinatawag na underemployment rate, ano bang ibig sabihin ng underemployment rate? Ang underemployment, ang ibig sabihin nun, may trabaho ka na, pag pero tatanungin ka, are you looking for a better job? Pag sinabi mong yes, underemployed ka. That used to be 26%. Ngayon, lowest ever, 10.4%. So gumanda na yung employment situation. Diyan ang makakatulong sa mga kababayan natin. Kung may trabaho ka, hindi mo na masyadong mapapansin yung 2 to 4% na inflation. Di ba? Kasi may trabaho ka naman eh. Di ba?
Sir, are we expecting po na malalagdaan ni PBBM yung 2024 national budget bago po yung trip niya sa Japan?
Kailan ba trip niya sa Japan?
December 16, 15, 16.
Malamang. Kasi I was talking to the liaison officer to na-approve na kasi yung budget eh. So they will go into conference committee by December 1st. And so there's enough time bago umalis si Presidente.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you po.
Maricel, did you have a question? Maricel Halili, TV5.
Hi, sir, magandang umaga po. Sir, just a clarification. What was the reaction of the president when you requested him to certify as urgent yung 4 na bills natin for the para sa revenue?
Wala naman
Additional
siyang
revenue.
specific reaction doon sa mga tax measures na nabanggit ko. May reaction siya doon sa LGUs, mga ganun. So, in general, okay naman yung report. It's like a brief on the state of the economy. So, I'm not expecting the president to have specific reaction to.
But how should we interpret this, sir? Will he certify these measures as urgent?
That you have to ask the president that. Not I don't have the power to certify. Okay.
Ivan Mayrina,
Thank you,
GMA7.
Marcel.
Secretary, the first full year of the Marcos administration is about to come to a close. How are we doing in terms of ensuring that the investment pledges actually translate from the foreign trips, sir? That investment pledges actually translate to actual investments and creates actual jobs. Perhaps you can give us an example, sir, kung ano yung nag-materialize na pinaka-significant.
Actually, my job is at the macro level. Ang talagang specific investment will be coming from DTI and Board of Investments. And I understand there are a lot of interest. In fact, they are coming here and talking to the right people. In fact, yung mga Saudi naman, nung sabi nila, dalhin nyo na rito yung tao na gusto namin makausap and then specify yung mga projects. So there's a lot of interest. No? Hindi naman mangyayari yan within 1 year, ganun, di ba? Okay? So but in fact, yung datos ng BOI, I think will show na there's a lot of investments going on. Okay?
Follow up. There's an upcoming trip this week, sir, and you said you're going to be part of the delegation. Ano ho ang magiging mission natin dito sa trip na ito? I know it's a climate change forum, but as Finance Secretary, are there specific goals that you have set for this particular trip?
Yung, I think, mas interesado tayo dun sa yung tinatawag na damage and loss activity, provision ng, kasi yan, matagal na yung pinag-uusapan yan, 15 years na yung COP na yan. And it was first brought up in 2017, I understand. And then it was also touched upon last COP17. So mas doon tayo interesado na kasi tayo is one of the most vulnerable countries eh. So there's got to be compensation. Okay. So yun ang interest namin at the moment.
It's in the climate financing for countries that are most vulnerable to climate change, and it operates on the principle of loss and damage. Okay. I think Jean Mangaluz.
Good morning, Sec. Can you explain why LGUs are not spending as much as they should? Have you identified which LGUs have low spending?
That has always been the problem, no? Ever since I can remember, the LGUs are in surplus position whereas the national government is in a deficit position. And nung time namin, I think one of the reasons is that LGUs by nature, or LGU officials by nature are kind of shy to invest in some projects, no? Kasi they can, in fact, LGUs can borrow money under the, but they're not borrowing money, and ang reason nila is yung term of office nila is 3 years, no? So you spend 1 year preparing your feasibility study, etc. Tapos ipipresent mo yun sa bangko, year 2. So tatakbo na naman siya ng re-election. Wala pa siyang napapakita pero may utang siya. So yun, baka magaganong issue. No? Secondly, there are some LGU officials na hindi talaga, they are not inclined to invest in some activities. No? So yan. And then there's also problem in hiring. Sabi nila, we need people to run some activities, but it's hard to attract them. No? So yun ang mga sinasabi nilang rason. Okay. So in response, I think we are going to tap the Development Academy of the Philippines and the local government academy to train people who may actually be instrumental in investing in some local government activities. Okay.
Okay. Kyle Atienza.
Hello, sir. Good morning. This is Kyle Chance of Business World. Sir, there are initiatives from many companies, including those that are based in the U.S., to decouple their global supply chains, sir, from China. India and Vietnam have emerged as early winners in this supply chain shift, sir. Has the Philippines benefited from this, and how do we plan to?
Yeah, maraming ganon. I think they have chosen Vietnam and Indonesia. And siguro makakasama tayo sa grupo na yan. Ang grupo na yung tawag namin VIP. No? Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines. No? So in my last trip to San Francisco, there's a funding agency, national government, and they said we're very much interested in the Philippines. Kasi nag-invest na sila sa Vietnam at saka sa Indonesia. And we gave them that list, yung 197 priority projects. We gave them the list. And in fact, dadating na yung isa doon, he will come here sometime in December to really scout anong investment opportunities sa Pilipinas. Okay?
How does, sir, follow-up questions. How does the Philippines, sir, plan to play a bigger role, sir, in the U.S. Semiconductor value chain?
Okay, siguro tanungin niyo si Secretary Pascual, yung mga ganyan. Mga very specific industry groups, si Secretary Pascual. So,
Okay. Pia Gutierrez, ABS-CBN.
Sir, follow-up lang dun sa LGUs. Ano po yung mga nakikita nyo other possible revenue sources that LGUs can tap into, considering yung mga challenges nga po na nabanggit ninyo kanina, like the very short term of office of local government officials?
ang talagang bread and butter ng LGUs is yung real property tax. No? And if you're a politician, you're not inclined to adjust the real property tax, hindi ba? Kasi maybe you don't want to tax yourself, baka you own half of the town, di ba? So, but now, with the new law, yung valuation will now be done through the Department of Finance, hindi na by the local government. So every 3 years, i-adjust namin yung valuation. So I think that will help increase the revenue yield of LGUs. Okay? Kasi ang current practice ngayon is they pass an ordinance adjusting the real property tax. Siyempre walang gumagalaw nun, walang gumagawa nun.
Sir,
Meron naman pero may resistance in general na i-adjust. Diba? Now with the new law, we will just adjust the zonal value of real property in that place and automatic na yan.
On another topic, sir, can you react on the appointment of Rafael Consing as President and CEO of the Maharlika Investment Corporation, since his appointment was marred with issues such as yung alleged revision daw po ng IRR to accommodate him and his previously dismissed cases?
That has been adequately explained. No? It's not for me to react to the appointment.
Sam Medanilia, Business Mirror.
Good morning, sir. What would be the drivers to reach the lower end of 6% full-year GDP growth, since think tanks are saying we will not be able to hit it? FMIC is forecasting 5.8, while AMRO is 5.6%.
Yung pinakita kong slide, yung we are, yung makeup, hindi mo ba nakita yung anong slide ba yan? There's a series of slides I showed, no? That's how we hope to. Sandali lang, ha?
Sige. Sir. Sir, another topic. May update rin po kaya sila kung may action na si President dun sa proposal nila extension for Executive Order 66, yung para po sa tariff?
I think that's Executive Order 10, if I'm not mistaken. Now, there will be a hearing to be conducted by the Tariff Commission on December 1st. Okay?
Ay, sir.
Yeah, you know.
Yung sa slide, sir.
Which slide?
Ah, okay. Parang nawawala yung slide eh. Binawasan niyo bang slide ko? Efficient budget execution. Hindi yan eh. Next. Sige, i-run mo na lang. Run it. Next slide. Hindi eh. Skip.
Oh, is that one? Oh, any. We will furnish you with the entire deck. How about that?
Ito yung page 14. Yung stop inflation, okay? Efficient budget execution, navigate external headwinds, implement structural reforms. Yan. Okay?
Sir, sir, i-add lang po ako. Yung dun sa 2024 GAA po, na earlier na mention po ni President yung fuel subsidy reforms, na inaipasok po ba yun dun sa final version ng 2024 budget?
Okay, under the law, you can give subsidy after 3 months consecutive, higher than $80, I think, per barrel. No? Is that what you're referring to? He wants it to be reduced to 1 month. No? So I don't know, wala akong access dun sa kung pumasok na siya sa Senate version kasi it's not in the House version, di ba? So and then from there magkakaroon pa ng conference committee. So I'm not sure. I'm not privy to what's happening there.
Okay, Alexis Romero, Philippine Star.
Secretary, if I'm not mistaken, the Philippines is eyeing 1.499 trillion deficit for this year. Is that target? Yun pa rin pa ba?
Kung ano yung sinabi ni Presidente sa BSF, yun pa rin.
So the same.
I have no idea kung yun.
Okay.
But whatever is submitted by the President, that is still the deficit target. Okay? We have not revised it.
Okay, given yung recent developments, is there a chance na we are going to revise it pa? Kasi di ba maring you're mentioning yung improvements in tax collections. Pwede pa ba itong maging mas mababa than expected for the full year?
Usually, we stick to the President's budget. Then during implementation, we have a series of reviews every quarter. So we might adjust them depending on the actual situation. No? So based on, say, first quarter performance, we adjust. Okay. So it's not cast in stones, but we respond to changes in economic numbers. Okay.
Harley Valbuena.
Hello, good afternoon po, Secretary. Sir, going back on the Maharlika Fund, sir, sitting as the chairperson of, in ex-official capacity of the Maharlika Investment Corporation, may update na po ba regarding dun sa vacant executive or directorial positions po ng MIC? May nasubmit na po bang list of nominees yung advisory body?
I understand that the advisory body has submitted the list, but I don't think there has been an appointment. There are two regular directors with a term of 3 years, and then 3 independent directors. Wala pa akong nalalaman na na-appoint. Okay?
Sir, are we still confident po that we can make the Maharlika Fund operational by the end of the year? Kahit po by this time hindi pa kumpleto yung list of positions.
I'm confident that it will be operational before the end of the year. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Alexis Romero again.
Secretary, may we just get details? Nag-meet na ba kayo ni Mr. Consing recently, and may we get yung information on?
Yeah, we met together with the advisory council at my office, the Department of Finance, and he explained what are his ideas. Okay, so we met last week.
So ano po yung napagkasunduan, or?
I cannot tell you. Okay.
Or
Okay, thank you. Secretary Diokno, at the meeting today, the President emphasized the relevance of the structural reforms that the DOF is putting in place. A lot of these reforms will take time, and some of them may be, we won't see the effect of it until even after this administration. But how important are these structural reforms? Let's say, he also mentioned some amendments in the DA and Department of Agriculture and Energy as well.
Yeah, the President mentioned possible, not possible, but he's spending part of the flood control money for DA so that they can actually do their own activities, and this will actually change the direction of the DA within the last, I guess that we're now moving towards the last 2 months, right? So yan lang naman. More post-harvest facilities, etc., and so forth and so on.
Okay.
Pahabol lang po.
Okay, last question.
Last question lang. Secretary, kanina po nabanggit ninyo para hindi na maramdaman ng mga mamamayan yung mataas na presyo ng mga bilihin, sabi niyo po, kung meron silang maayos at dekalidad na trabaho. Pero kailan po kaya yun magiging totoo? Ngayon po ay hinaing ng mga manggagawa ay yung pong mababang sahod. Ang sabi po niya dapat ang entry daw or yung pinaka-minimum ay 33,000 pesos a month para lang po ito masabing living wage o yung nakabubuhay na sahod. Ano po yung take ninyo dito?
Yung employment is happening right now. Sabi ko nga, that's based on the most recent data, yung 4.5%. So, and even the so-called labor force participation rate, ang taas. Kasi it's around 65%. No? And in other words, marami talagang gusto mag-join ng labor force and they are able to find jobs. No?
Pero yung sweldo po kasi ang sinasabi nilang hindi pasok doon sa tinatawag na living wage. Dapat daw po 33,000 a month ang sasahurin para lang magkaroon ng maayos na buhay at pamumuhay yung isang pamilya na may 5 miyembro po.
Dapat binabalansin mo rin yung concern ng mga industrialists at saka yung mga workers, di ba? So, baka naman hindi affordable sa mga industrialists yung, baka kailangan magsara nila para lang maka-accommodate sila ng ganong klaseng sweldo, di ba?
Wala po bang kasamang wage increase sa 2024 national budget kung nabigyan po yung sa social services, pabahay, ang dagdag sahod po ba hindi nabigyan?
I think continuous naman yung review ng wage board for the salary increase. In fact, I think except for 1 or 2 regions, nabigyan nila ng salary increase yung mga workers.
Okay, Alexis Romero.
Secretary, just asking for update dun sa free note nating sukok bonds. How much was
Kala ko ayaw mo.
how much was raised po dun sa kasi
Hindi pa
first
sa
time-
nare-raise actually. We will raise it maybe middle of December. Okay. So in-announce pa lang 'yan. Okay.
announcement.
Ka-announce pa lang. It will be ang preference namin is ang maturity niya is 5.5 years rather than 5 years. Okay?
Walang target amount for
If I remember right, mga around $1 billion.
1 billion US.
Okay.
Thank you, Sec.
Okay,
All
I
right.
think we have one more question there. Is it from UNTV? Kyle Atienza.
Sir, a bill seeking to amend the CREATE Act has already been filed at the House, sir. With the author, Congressman Salceda, saying that it should also consider the possible impact of the 15% global global minimum for corporate tax, sir. Sir, what's your comment on this, sir?
Yung 15% global minimum corporate income tax, ano yan eh, it's an advocacy by OECD, no? Hindi natin alam kung matutuloy yan dahil right now our corporate income tax is 25 to 2025, no? So baka it's too early to go to 15%. But that's a good floor. Alam mo, importante ng 15% is the tawag nilang race to the bottom. Kasi ayaw naman ng mga bansa na magpapababaan sila ng rate to attract investors. Kasi mawawalan sila ng revenues, no? So that's a floor, okay?
But sir, some economists who were supportive of the original CREATE law, sir, have warned that further lowering taxes under the bill could do more harm than good, sir. Any comment on that, sir?
Kaya you have to weigh whether you can really afford the 15%, no? At saka, in any event, an investor will go to a country not necessarily because only of the tax regime, no? They look at the economic opportunities being made available to them. Another factor will be the availability of labor. Napakaganda ng ano natin. We have the youngest population, no? in this part of the world. 25 years old is the median age. So that's very attractive. So those are the factors na tinitingnan nila, no? Ease of doing business, tinitingnan din nila yon. Tinitingnan din nila yung power cost, no? And yun ang one of our disadvantages. Napakataas ng power dito. Because in other Asian countries, sinasubsidize ng gobyerno yung power cost, no? So these are the considerations. Hindi lang tax system ang tinitingnan nila, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, Secretary.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary Diokno. Thank you
Okay.
for briefing us on the Philippine economy's resiliency, it being the fastest economy in the world, right? Very optimistic. Thank you. This concludes our press briefing. Thank you, Malacanang Press Corps.